absolutely temporary provision. So the cessation of the membership is happening on the ground which I have told you.
Thank you. The next one which I already mentioned was, what are the rights of the nominees once a member dead? So on death of the member, what are the rights of the nominees?
This answer will also include many of the subsequent questions. Let me tell you. To go little bit in history, Section 30 of the Act was exclusively for transfer of shares and interests of the deceased member. These provisions have been made inapplicable to the housing societies by introduction of Section 154B13, and Section 30 is made inapplicable to the housing society. Now, what was that section previously and what is the section now? It will be better if I tell you both the things, because you will be able to differentiate as to what is the difference in the new law. Section 30 as it was, it is applicable, not applicable to housing society but applicable to other cooperatives. He started with that if a member expires and if there is a nomination, the society shall admit the nominee as a member of the society. The corresponding bylaws were bylaws number 34. And if there is no nomination as per the Act, and under the bylaws it was mentioned that if there is nominee does not come forward, coming forward not part of the Act but it was through the bylaws 35. In that case, the legal heir can step in for the purpose of membership of the society. Under the new provision, Section 30, the position of Section 30 is totally reversed. For the purpose of 154B13, in case of demise of a member, the legal heir of the deceased will be eligible to become member of the society. However, the first proviso says that if there is a nomination, before the legal heir can step in, the nominee will be made a provisional member. So it is absolutely a temporary period till the time the legal heir are introduced. On what basis the legal heirs will be introduced will come in the subsequent questions. However, in case there is no nomination and the legal heir also do not come forward, then there is a second proviso to Section 154B13 that says that in the opinion of the committee, there is a person who is a legal heir, then he can be invited to become provisional member. So this is the
question is rights of transfer of shares on demise of member, and what is the importance of a will? So what is the importance of a will?
Yeah, this is a very important thing. Let me tell you, Section 30, which is not applicable now to the housing society, the committee did not have power or authority, in my view, to look into the will of the deceased person for the purpose of Section 30. Because the provision was very clear, the nominee will be inducted, or in the absence of nominee, the legal heir will come under bylaw number 35. However, the society used to face a lot many issues, and therefore, the new provisions which are there under B13 says that 4 types of documents are now available for the society to take cognizance. What are those 4 documents? Any testamentary document, we call it a will. Then succession certificate, heirship certificate, or a family settlement agreement. Now effectively if we see, if there is a will, there has to be probate in the city of Mumbai metropolitan. And therefore, because see, unless there is a probate, the executor or the administrator as the case may be, will not be able to execute any document of transfer or deed of transfer in favor of the legatee over various properties. And therefore, the society, in my view, society can take cognizance of the will, but that will be for the limited purpose of membership of the society. I understand that the views of Ramesh Bhai differs to this literally, because in the first lecture you say that it should be registered and nomination probate. So my view is, see, this particular provision is introduced for the facilitating the society to avoid the litigation at its door. As far as the ownership of the property is concerned, the general law applies. General law is either the Transfer of Property Act or the succession provision, personal law of the member. And therefore, even though on the basis of the will, the family will come to a family settlement agreement, which can be given to the committee, and committee will admit them. However, if you see, say for example, the property was in the name of grandfather, it was by way of nomination or by way of ballot number 35, it was transferred to his son. And his son has transferred, on his demise, it is to be transferred to the legal heir of the deceased, the father. What will happen? The society will transfer the shares. But as we know, the share certificate itself is not the title document of the property. There has to be some document under general law. What are the general law? For example, release deed is one of the documents, which is to be registered under Transfer of Property Act document and Registration Act. So my view is, on demise of a member, if there is a nomination, it will be transferred to the nominee provisionally. He will be provisional member, and the legal heir will be introduced later on. Currently, bylaw number 35 is a parallel provision, but so far the new bylaws and the new rules have not been come. Maybe by end of December we may have the rules available with us.
Next question is, what are the conditions to be complied with for admission to membership?
This is a very important. What is the membership requirement? Membership will be required when you purchase any property in a cooperative housing society, or when the member expires, legal heir constitution of shares. Now, in both these cases, the precondition is under section 22, which is to be applied with necessary modification, and there are the modifications made under chapter 13 by way of introduction of definition of word person under 154B1 clause 20. Now, the word person has been widely defined, unlike the provisions under the section 22. So, who can? First of all, the person should be eligible to be member of the society. He should be eligible to contract, competent to contract, right? An individual should be competent to contract. There should not be some disqualification and all these things, disabilities. HUF, which was previously not allowed to be member of the society, is specifically included. Unregistered trust, association of persons, body of individual, LLP are the various categories which have been included in the definition of person, and therefore you have to read the section 22 with the new definition of word person, and all these categories of person will be eligible to become member of the society.
What are the new provisions about nomination?
As far as the nomination is concerned, there are no specific changes. However, the question was partly in my mind was the associate membership, honestly. I wanted to add the associate membership because there are some queries. Because in case of associate member, 10 categories of relatives have been specified. In case of some other states, say for example in the case of West Bengal, there are specific provisions that a family member can only, these kind of provisions are not there in Maharashtra Cooperative Society Act. However, the associate membership has been now possible for 10 categories which have been mentioned there. Husband, wife, father, mother, son, daughter, son-in-law, daughter-in-law, nephew and niece. These are the categories introduced for the purpose of associate membership, which has been defined under clause 18 of the 154B1. Associate member means husband, wife, father, mother, brother, sister, son, daughter, son-in-law, daughter-in-law, nephew and niece, a person duly admitted to membership. A person, that means the person has to be competent to contract as defined, and he has to be duly admitted for transferring the share. Without a person being a member, the share cannot be transferred. So becoming a member is a precondition. Membership of a housing society, on a written recommendation of a member, there has to be prescribed form. In the old provisions, associate membership was given, form 8 was there. Under the new provision, there is no new form prescribed so far. But there has to be form. Not only that, for every time the associate member wants to attend the meeting, there has to be the letter from the member. That is one thing. Secondly, associate member need not be the owner of the property. He need not have the interest in the property. It's a very important thing. And thirdly, the associate member's name should not be there, must not be there in the share certificate. What is the reason? Because now only those persons who have the interest in the property, their name can only be there in the share certificate or provisional member. If the provisional member becomes to the nominee, then the nominee need not be having any interest in the property, because that nominee can be anyone, any Tom, Dick and Harry. There is no qualification like associate member as far as the nominees are concerned, and therefore there is a provisional membership. So this is how it works out.
Next question is, what are different types of members?
As I said, member, joint member, associate member and provisional member. These are the four categories. I think in my reply I have already discussed, and therefore I need not elaborate further.
What are the rights of an associate member? What are the rights?
As I said, associate member can participate in the election, can attend a meeting. However, there is a precondition that every time he attends, he has to have the letter or a permission from the, because the wording in the associate membership is a typical wording. On written recommendation of a member to exercise his rights and duties. This is specifically mentioned. The associate member has been specifically selected by the member to exercise his rights and his duties. And therefore, every time he will need to have a communication from the member with his written prior consent and whose name does not stand in the share certificate.
What is the procedure for transfer of shares?
Transfer of shares, there are two provisions. 154B12 and 154B13 as I told. As far as 12 is concerned, that comes in picture in case of transfer of property by way of sale under transfer of property. And 154B13 comes in picture when there is a demise of a member. So in both the cases, the respective bylaws as of today are in case of sale, bylaw number 38 is there. Where are the conditions? You have to give the intimation, the acceptance of the intention to, then the application for membership, payment of membership fees, transfer premium, then one or two undertakings, then the permission from the, if the land is leasehold land or the property is constructed on the land belonging to MADA, BMC or government, then or collector rather, then in that case there has to be an NOC or whatever that is prescribed in the bylaw number 38. So on compliance of all these conditions, the committee can consider the application, and the starting point is whether he is competent to contract and eligible to become member of the society. Then he will be made a member, and then the share will be transferred. So as and when in the managing committee, if you have to draft the minutes and the resolutions, the first resolution has to be the resignation of the outgoing member. If it is transfer, deletion of the name of the deceased member, admission of the new member, and then transfer of shares. And in transfer of shares, you have to invariably include a clause that one of the members of the committee, not the chairman and the secretary, a person, member of the committee has to be specifically authorized to sign the endorsement of the share certificate, apart from the chairman and the secretary. So you must take care that these resolutions are invariably passed in the managing committee. All those things.
Thank you. My last question, what remedy is available to a person whose membership is refused by the society?
Yeah. Now what happens is, as I said, there are two types of transfer and transmission. As far as the transfer is concerned, the relevant sections are section 22 and 23 of the Act. 22 is applicable with modification. Now modification is section 154B4 has been introduced, which says that any person of the different category of member will be admitted irrespective of any provision under section 22. That means the person who has been defined will be admitted if they are eligible to be member of the society. Now what is the procedure? When you make an application to the society will accept the application, and society has to decide. The decision has to come within 90 days. If you refer to the procedure to be followed by the secretary, the old bylaws prescribe the procedure under bylaws number 65 and the new bylaws under 63. Specific as if there is any deficiency, we will call for the information. He will put up these papers before the managing committee, next forthcoming managing committee meeting. In any case, within 3 months, the decision has to be taken. The decision has to be either acceptance or rejection, or the committee may not decide anything. So all these three positions, we have a remedy. If it is rejected, then an appeal under section 22. If it is kept pending, then after 90 days, the person can approach the registrar with an appeal for deemed membership. If the society does not accept the application, says that will not accept it, then what is the remedy? In that case, you have to approach the registrar under section 23 and submit a document with the prescribed form. I think form 8 is there prescribed. You have to submit to the registrar along with your check of transfer premium, transfer fee, and the membership fees, relevant documents. And the registrar will forward these documents to the society within 30 days of the receipt by his office. Then within further 60 days, the society has to take the decision, the same decision. Rejection, for which there is an appeal. Approval, there is no problem, and keeping pending. In case of keeping pending, you have to again approach the registrar with an appeal and for deemed membership. So this is the entire thing.
Thank you so much. So that ends my session. Thank you.
Anand Gupta passed the SIMO to attend, but what happened was Sehgal is going to ask his questions. Yeah, please.
Well, to begin with, I would like to welcome Mr. Ramesh Raman. He's been associated with this from the beginning. In fact, one of the top leaders along with Neeralogy and Anand Gupta, they were responsible for this program. So all of you are sitting because of these people's ideas and origin of the program. Welcome, sir.
In fact, but for these seminars could not have been possible, continuing for 16 months. But for Ramesh Bhai, it could not have been possible. We have, as a Rotarian also and as a, on our behalf also,
Okay, now on behalf of Anand Gupta ji, I'll ask the first question. Can funds of the society be utilized for proceedings filed or taken by or against officers in personal capacity? I think the most important thing is personal capacity.
It's a very important question which perception of the committee, rather the secretary and the chairman and the treasurers are totally different. They spend money of the society to protect the proceeding which may be against them. Now let me tell you, there's a specific provision under section 71 capital A which mentions that if there are any proceedings which are taken up by or against the office bearers, mind well, office of the individual, if there are any proceedings taken up by or against the office bearer in the personal capacity, then the expenses to protect or rather to the proceeding which may be taken up to protect them, the expenses cannot be paid from the coffers of the society. Now what are these various types of things? Section 71A specifically mentions three provisions, 78, 78A and 96. 78 speaks about suspension. Now along with the suspension, if the chairman, secretary or the treasurer is suspended from the committee for default which he might have committed, then in that case, for his defense, if he files an appeal or the revision, then the expenses for that appeal or the revision cannot be borne and paid by the society. Section 78 capital A speaks about removal. The office bearer has been removed from the committee for whatever defaults committed by him, and if goes to the registrar, I mean the joint registrar or the higher authority by way of appeal or revision, then those expenses have to be borne and paid by that person only. Society cannot. And section 96 relates to the proceedings in the cooperative court. If the cooperative court comes to a conclusion that certain member, I mean the office bearer has to pay certain expenses, then those expenses cannot be paid out of the coffers of the society. These are very important provisions. If there are subsequent provisions, subsection 2 and 3 are also there, it states that that particular person does not pay this, then action can be taken against him by the registrar. He can be disqualified for 5 years also. And registrar even can issue a recovery certificate to collect or recover these dues from him under the revenue laws. So this is how the way we go for 101 certificate up till now, and now under 154 V29 recovery certificate. That kind of certificate can be by the registrar to recover this money from that particular member. And provisions of 156 or 158 for recovery will be applicable.
Thank you, sir. How to conduct elections in my society having 98 members?
Now see, as we know, with the amendment and introduction of chapter 13B, originally the election provisions are in section 73CB. In the amendment, what has happened was, state cooperative election authority was established and all the elections of all the cooperative societies were to be conducted through the election authority only. Lot of problems happened because of the incapacity of the authority, whatever reason, many elections were pending, and therefore there was a demand. And under the amended provision, the societies up to 250 members have been excluded from the requirement of holding election through the election authority. However, the election rules have not been so far notified. I have come across in the social media the draft rules, which have been, I think there is an ordinance for the draft rule, but those have not been finally completed. As far as the election in all the societies up to 250 members is concerned, most of the provisions will be parallel to the previous provision which were part of the bylaw. The only difference expected is, like the auditors panel, even the election officers may be panel, and the society will have to approach or appoint one of the panel officer. But let us wait for the detailed rules for elections. Previously, election used to happen in a very small society by raising the finger in a general body meeting, and in a big society there used to be a program of 35 or 40 or 41 days, regular, filing nomination, scrutiny, rejection, withdrawal, polling, counting and result. To happen over a period of 35 to 40, 41 days. We are waiting for the election rules now.
Hello. Yeah, thank you, Raji. What are the provisions in the Act regarding voting powers of members?
See, the voting powers under the unamended provision was under section 27. And the new provisions are introduced 154B11. I will directly, because it's a very small provision, I will directly read it so that nothing is missed. 154B11. Voting rights of members. No member of the society shall have more than one vote in the affairs, which was there in the previously also. Provided that every right to vote shall be exercised personally. No proxies allowed, no power of attorney allowed. It is to be personally exercised. Provided further that in case of equality of vote, the casting vote for the chairman, which is normally the procedure. Associate members shall have a right to vote with prior written consent of the member. So every time, as I told you, associate member has to carry with him the written consent of the member to participate in the meetings also and participate in the election also. Provisional member shall have a right to vote. Provisional member will have a right to vote. In case of joint member, the same position which was there previously in associate member, where associate member used to have an interest in the property. Now associate member do not have interest in the property, but the joint member do have compulsorily interest in the property, and therefore if the member is absent, joint one will be able to exercise. If member and J1 are absent, then J2 will be there. Likewise. In case of association of society, these are the provisions for the representative capacity voting. So the person who has been authorized by the company to the director, by the partnership firm to the partner, or by any other association or body, the person who has been, or another society, they authorize some person and he will have a right to vote, but which are covered by new provision 154B11.
Now, my last question. Who will decide the appointment of statutory auditor for auditing the accounts for current year?
Yeah, see, sir, this is a part of section 75 which provides the provisions for annual general body meeting. Friends, it is very important. I have come across many societies where they don't bother to have the agenda of appointment of the statutory auditor. It is compulsory to have an agenda of appointment of statutory auditor under section 75. If you fail to do it, then it is a serious problem and the registrar can take action, including supersession of the committee also and disqualification of the respective members also, office bearer. Now, statutory auditor has to be necessarily appointed in the general body meeting. There is a subsequent question about the periodicity of 3 years. So that is a proviso to that section, subsection 1 of section 75, that an auditor cannot be consecutively appointed for more than 3 years, consecutive years. With a gap, he can be appointed. But consecutively for more than 3 years, an statutory auditor cannot be appointed.
One clarification. If in the AGM, this has not been part of the agenda, then how can you rectify it?
See, there are the specific provision. Now, for the agenda of statutory auditor, special notice is not required. But section 75 includes it, and therefore it is a procedural lapse if that agenda is not included. However, my opinion is that under permission of chair, this particular issue can be taken up. Now, what is the basis of my telling? Say for example, section 35 requires that a specific notice to be given for the purpose of expulsion, and there this issue cannot be taken up under the permission of chair. However, in case of auditor's appointment, in my view, the permission of chair, the issue can be raised and he can be appointed.
Can the society appoint auditor for a continuous period of more than 3 years? What are the provisions in the Act regarding voting powers of members? That is also been identified.
Can there be a point in the agenda that the managing committee should be authorized to appoint an auditor from the panel and leave the choice of the auditor to the panel?
Apart from asking, replying these questions, one issue which remained to be highlighted under this answer was that the auditor has to be out of the panel maintained by the Division Joint Registrar. There are many questions. I think, Ramesh, I had heard you once in the BKC talking from the BCA platform about the issues raised by the institute and all this. But ultimately it has been settled now that the panel auditor has to be there for the purpose of selection. Now, as far as if it is not possible to immediately decide as general body, then I think the general body can pass a resolution delegating that, but there has to be specific delegation that the committee is authorized to appoint a statutory auditor and issue the appointment letter and blah blah blah, whatever is there. However, let me tell you, this cannot happen for 2-3 years. I mean, every year there has to be resolution. The point is, general body cannot say that for next 3 years or something like that, the committee is empowered. That is not possible. There has to be an agenda every year. Section 75, subsection 2, capital is very clear. There has to be an agenda every year and the resolution to be passed. If the general body does not appoint, then it has to delegate to authority, specific authority, to the managing committee.
Now, I just want to differ with that. See, certain business can be done only by the general body. General body cannot delegate that power. What has been vested with the general body has to be exercised by the general body. If you are trying to say that, yes, we were not able to find out the auditors, the panel list can be kept before the general body and one can read and then point out somebody. Secondly, if you are delegating the power to the managing committee, then where is the sanctity about the independence of the auditor? The auditor has to be appointed by the members to verify the actions taken by the managing committee. Otherwise, it will be something like chaos of PMC. In fact, today the government is seriously seized and government is seriously thinking the appointment of auditor not only by the corporates, even by the societies, has to be done by an independent authority. Because then there will be an independence. Because if the management is going to appoint the auditor, then what is the sanctity? And even the income tax, if you look at it, the assessor himself appoints the auditor. If you look at the GST, under the Act also, only thing it has to be a chartered accountant practicing holding certificate of practice. But we have seen that independence is lost if the person who is appointing and the person who is getting it done are the same. And therefore, with all my submission, if it is delegated to the managing committee and such managing committee appoints the auditor, that will be 101% treated as an internal audit, and the audit becomes null and void, and the actions prescribed under section 75 against the committee will be initiated, which means that entire committee will be dissolved, or the person who is responsible and accountable to get that agenda passed, that is chairman and secretary, will be removed from the committee. And not only that, they will be debarred from contesting the election for next one full term.